Good morning, Walla Walla University. I am Pam Kris, and it's a privilege this morning to be able to introduce my friend and our community speaker, Kris Lowen. Kris is a pastor and writer who holds a Master's of Arts degree in Global Leadership from Fuller Theological Seminary and a Bachelor of Arts in Theology from Walla Walla University. His first book, Hidden: How Secrets Hold You Back or Launch You Forward, will be released later this year. If Kris is a familiar face to you, it is likely because he is on the pastoral staff here at Walla Walla University Church. If you come to church, you would have already seen him up here leading out and preaching on a regular basis. If you don't come to church, well, you should. Kris grew up in this valley participating in orchestra, sports, and all things Walla Walla Valley Academy and Walla Walla University. I first met Kris in 1984 in the Sabbath school wing of this very church. He was a handsome little man working his way through the terrible twos. He shared the same cradle roll class as my daughter, which tells you that Kris is old and that I am very old. Kris has a keen sense of fashion. He is a snappy dresser. I like snappy dressers. My daughter tells me that Kris is the only date she ever had to a banquet that was dressed properly for the occasion. He showed up at our front door in a white jacket tuxedo. The choice classed up the soft chiffon gown and the updo my daughter had spent all day on in a way that jeans and a Metallica t-shirt never could. It is the little things, people, especially for moms of daughters. Kris is married. He and his wife, Paige, met in the first grade and finished their first 12 years of schooling together. When it came time for university, Paige went to a faraway college that shall remain nameless in the flat state of Nebraska. Regardless of distance, they still managed to fall in love and ended up getting married on an ordinary Thursday night during a busy spring quarter right here in Walla Walla. Kris does report he received his lowest grade that quarter, a C in welding. Luckily, he didn't aspire to be a professional welder. Kris and Paige have two young sons, Finn and Sawyer, who they describe as the light of their lives. In addition to being wild about his kids, Kris enjoys running 2 marathons to date, cooking, and Legos. Finally, I have been witness to tragedies in Kris's life that changed him profoundly. My heart has ached for him, and I've prayed for him on more than one occasion. I can report this morning beauty has come from ashes. Listen closely, my friends, to a difficult story that will give you pause this day. Most importantly, it will clearly point you to another friend that both Kris and I love and trust, that is Jesus Christ, the helper and healer of all. Please welcome warmly my friend, my pastor, Kris Lowen.
Near the end of high school, I went through an experience that I'll never forget. It was a Sunday night, and my mother awoke me yelling. It wasn't unusual for her in our home. I was the oldest male in the household, and we lived in the country, and there were frequently critters that needed to be scared away or loud noises outside that needed to be checked out. But this time, her voice was urgent, frantic even. I made my way up the stairs from my bedroom, and I was met with heat and the gentle crackle of fire. My heart immediately began racing. I made my way back through the basement and out an egress window, and I didn't feel the November chill on my almost completely naked skin because of the shock of what I saw. My house was engulfed in flames. They were 40 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet high. It didn't really matter, but my shock turned to horror when I realized that my little brother was still inside. And we screamed and we pounded on the wall of his room. And it's not like the movies, house fires. It doesn't work that way. You can't just run inside and come out with the little baby. It works on TV, but it's not real life. The heat is so intense. Just standing next to the house, my skin was burned. The smoke was so thick and so black. I will never forget the smell. When I smell it today, everything comes back in an instant. Casey didn't come to the window that night. We helplessly tried to get him out. I found a ladder on the ground and broke his window, and I tried to climb in, but it was 20 minutes before the first fire truck got there, and it was another half an hour before they could get him. Casey died when he was 12. And as you can imagine, this experience haunted me in the 2 decades since it happened. And it set me on a path of grieving and processing trauma and loss that fell upon my family that night, and also trying to figure out how to deal with a variety of destructive coping mechanisms I adopted to deal with it. And for many years, I kept a great deal of my grief secret. From my nightmares to my despair, from my doubts to my habits to my fatalism, all hidden out of sight. And that secret keeping has had a profound effect on my life, almost as impactful as the fire itself. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. The things we hide will hold us back from the lives we want. But they can also be leveraged into giving us the best that life has to offer. Let me explain. Everyone keeps secrets. You sitting here right now, you're hiding things from your friends. From the people sitting right next to you, you're hiding things from your family members, from classmates, from teachers, from your doctors, from mentors, and of course from the general public. We're all hiding things. What kind of secrets? Well, from mundane to harrowing, from dark to absolutely necessary. We all keep secrets for an infinite number of reasons about an infinite number of subjects. Some of you have inventions that you're hiding that will change the world and change your lives. Maybe some of you are hiding your goals, your life aspirations, the things that you would like to accomplish over the course of life. You could be hiding certain habits or preferences or desires or patterns in your lives. Some of us are almost certainly hiding our sexual orientation or our sense of gender identity. Some of you might be hiding your secret love of Justin Bieber. We human beings hide our mistakes and our successes. We hide our illnesses and our disabilities. We hide our crimes and our family patterns. Some of us are hiding the fear we have about our drinking, the way we use people for our own gratification, or the way that we can't stop harming ourselves. Some of us hide the things that we wish we could say or do. And whether it's a guilty pleasure or a little white lie, everyone is hiding something. Following the death of my brother, I hid my grief. I kept it out of sight, and that decision has had many impacts on my life, more than I could have anticipated. Maybe you can relate with some of them. I felt isolated and disconnected from my carefree friends who weren't experiencing the effects of PTSD like I was. I felt secret shame from the crippling coping patterns I had adopted to deal with my sadness and powerlessness. My habitual use of pornography, my compulsive overeating would have been problems enough had they been out in the open for all to see, but hidden, they only reinforced a sense of utter unworthiness. I lost out on an untold treasure trove of wisdom from mentors and potential mentors who would have jumped at the opportunity to help me had they only known what was really going on in my life. Because I was unable and unwilling to ask for what I needed and what I wanted, I meandered through life with alternating patterns of depressive despair and explosive rage. I can't calculate the massive amount of energy I wasted keeping things hidden. And that's what secrets do, don't they? In order to keep ourselves from accidentally saying them, we have to keep it right on the fronts of our minds. We have to keep it there on our attention, or else it might slip out and it soaks up energy that we might otherwise use for more productive or interesting things. I'm sure my secrets affected my physical health, a dynamic verified many times over in scientific studies. You know, there's a saying, you're only as sick as your secrets. It's true. It's not just a saying. In fact, one study showed that even that when we conceal our lives, we're more likely of developing cancer. These are just the facts from my own story. Your secrets have affected you in these and many other ways. And I don't think I'm overstating reality when I say the things we hide threaten what we want most in life, whether it's a distinguished professional career that you long for, or a warm family home, or just a fun and peaceful life. The things that you're hiding right now put it at risk. You know, as I matured through college in the years following the fire, my soul came to an obvious conclusion. I had to reveal what was going on in my life. I had to talk about it, or I'd be risking my future, and I might even die. It was toward the end of my undergraduate years at then Walla Walla College, right here, that I began seeing my first therapist. I started talking about what was going on in my life. I started attending different support groups, not unlike those that are available on campus now. I confided in confidants and close friends, certain people. I found retreat settings to be useful in talking about what was really going on in my life. But the moment I found the most transformative was when I spoke to my then fiancée, Paige. I told her things that had never escaped my lips before. And to my surprise, she didn't run away. She didn't try to break up with me. She stayed right there with me. She looked in my eyes with curiosity and unconditional love, and it changed everything. And it was the first time in my life that I felt fully known, fully seen, fully understood, and yet completely loved for exactly who I was. And it was the first time I felt that from God. I mean, I was a Theo major. I studied all about God. I knew all the amazing facts about how and why God loves us, but I didn't get it in here. I needed to see it in flesh and blood through the eyes of another person who loved me exactly for who I was. It changed everything. After that, confession became a regular spiritual practice for me. It became a process of carefully and slowly revealing what was going on in my life, my inner life. I gradually, repeatedly pulled back the cover in different contexts, in different places. And the more that I confessed, the more I found healing come my way. I started getting freedom and control of previously unmanageable patterns in my life. I started discovering new connections with people, and I found that truly I am not alone. And neither are you. The depth of intimacy and relationships that I already had only grew. They became some of the greatest gifts in my life. And I found a well of empathy and courage and strength that I never knew I had. The connection between confession and healing is absolutely undeniable. It's even in the scriptures explicitly stated, James chapter 5, verse 16, confess your sins one to another and you will be healed. The word there, healed, is not the word saved as we might be tempted to read it. This isn't talking about what happens over the way by and by after we die. It's talking about what happens in our physical bodies here and now. There's a direct connection between speaking the darkness that's going on in our lives and getting better. Confession has had a long tradition in Christianity. It's been a part of our history for almost as long as we've been around. And while I understand that Catholic expressions of this can be romanticized by outsiders like me, as a Protestant pastor, I grieve the fact that in our churches we have not found any substantive substitute for this essential Christian practice. We have no regular practice of confession in the Adventist tribe even. It's haphazard. If you decide to do it, it comes your way. And also, as a Protestant pastor, I've been thrilled at the recent cultural rediscovery of the value of authenticity and transparency and honesty that we've been experiencing in America the last couple of decades. Many of you are familiar with Brené Brown and her famous TED Talk. It's the most watched TED Talk of all time, and she discusses the connection between vulnerability and healing shame. And what she talks about is absolutely true, but it's not new. It's old. It's human. We've known this for generations, truly. Telling what's going on in our lives, telling the truth leads to healing. Now, because I found confession so useful in my life, early on, I assumed that I should not keep any secrets at all. I assumed that I should tell all my truth all the time to everyone wherever I crossed their paths. And you can probably predict how this turned out. Over the years, I've had more awkward moments than you can shake a stick at. We know intuitively that there's such a thing as TMI, right? We know intuitively there's such a thing. There's such a difference between private and secret. When we try to teach this to our kids, when you have kids, you will try to teach this to your kid. I guarantee you, when you have a child, it will come out of your mouth. No, you cannot pee in the yard. It's going to come out of your mouth. I guarantee it. Or, yes, when we have company over, you have to wear clothes. It will come out of your mouth. And the reason it will come out of your mouth is not because you want your kids to feel ashamed of their bodies. It will not be for that reason. It will be because privacy is important for their safety. There are real risks in having what should say private exposed. Many of us have watched with interest the Me Too movement as it's developed over the past 18 months. Many of us in this room are part of that movement. And one of the abiding themes of that conversation is that what should have stayed private too often, sometimes daily, was exposed, was grabbed, was touched, or was used, or was seen by people who did not have the right. There is a violence in all forms of sexual assault. Even when there are no bruises, even when it happens in the calm of a doctor's office or the apparent safety of a living room, even when there's no fighting or kicking or screaming, there's a violence and profound injury that takes place in all forms of sexual assault, because at the very, very least, Something that should have stayed private was taken. And for those of you who are in recovery for such assaults that often stay secret, those of you who are in recovery, many of you know that it sometimes involves going back to revisit that event and discovering, sometimes for the first time, that it was not your fault. Sometimes recovery involves retelling the story and reasserting our own sense of autonomy over our bodies and over our lives. One of the most surprising discoveries in my personal and professional life around the power of confessing our secrets has been the nearly equal power found in protecting good boundaries. Just as willing confession in the context of unconditional love can bring transcendence and healing, so can resisting forced exposure. There's something profound and beautiful and life-giving and confidence-building and identity-confirming about saying no, even if it happens after the fact. Even if it happens on the streets or in therapy. The age of social media has taught us that there is incredible monetary value in our personal information. And what I hope we've also learned is there is incredible personal value in that information as well. There is great, unspeakable value in our spiritual privacy. Your secrets are not good. And they're not bad, as once I naively believed. It's all about how we use them. And so the question becomes, what can we do then to steward our secrets well? And so before we close, I want to share two principles that have guided me in my life in answering this question, how to steward secrets. The first principle is that the right thing at the wrong time is the wrong thing. I learned this from the AA, the Alcoholics Anonymous community. For those of you who are familiar with 12-step style recovery, you know that these gatherings are not classroom settings, they're not teaching, they're not seminar, it's not about disseminating information, they are moments for storytelling. They're contexts for confession, if you will. And not surprisingly, a great many people have found healing through the exposure of the darkness in their lives and hearing their own stories mirrored back to them from strangers, anonymous people across the table from them. And what often happens for people in recovery as they begin to see these addictive patterns lose power over their lives, and as they begin to see the shame melt away, they often begin to ask the question, should I talk about this in other places? They're not afraid about this thing getting out. And they begin to ask that question, should I tell my kids? Should I tell my family? What about my church? What about my Sabbath school room? Should I tell my coworkers? What about Instagram? Who should I tell? In other words, how do I best steward this part of my private life? It's not a secret anymore. And one principle that's taught in these circles is to ask the question, will it hurt me to tell this story in this time and place? And will it hurt the person I'm telling it to in this time and place? You can imagine how it works with some little kid, right? Will it hurt me and will it hurt others? And if the answer to that question is yes or likely, it's not the right time. The right thing at the wrong time is the wrong thing. One mundane way this plays out is as it relates to goals. Imagine for a moment that you have a goal of going to medical school and becoming a physician. It's a great goal to have. The more you share that goal, the more your brain is tricked into thinking that you've already achieved it. The more you tell people that secret goal, the more your brain thinks that you've already done it, and therefore the less motivation you have to actually pursue it. And so it's of strategic value to you for you to keep that goal hidden, to keep it private. Sure, absolutely. Like tell your advisor that you're wanting to do this, tell your professors, make sure you're taking the right courses, talk to your mentors, but keep it private. It will actually hurt you to spread that secret around. So if the first principle has to do with what and when, the second principle has to do with who. When I entrusted my secrets to my then fiancée, Paige, I was absolutely terrified, just petrified of speaking about these things to her. It felt like an enormous risk. And I'm sort of a risk-averse person in general, but I had all of the catastrophes worked out in my head. I thought about how she could betray me, how she could blackmail me. I thought about the ways that she could put it on the internet or tell everyone about it. I thought about the risk to my future career that it could make. I thought about how the ways that she could tell all the other available potential mates in the world about this thing, and I would never find another person again in the rest of my life if she were to reject me. Like I was very creative with my risks. I was terrified. And let me tell you, the reason it felt like a risk was because it was a risk. I mean, absolutely, keeping secrets is a dangerous thing. It can harm us. But let's not mistake, confession is risky business as well. And so the second principle is to trust well, to trust appropriately before we share. And this may seem obvious, before we share, we must make sure that recipient has proven themselves worthy of holding our heart in their hands. We have to ask the question, how likely is it this person will respond with kindness and accountability and love and grace? And if you can't find a place that is full of unconditional love for you, come to my office. I guarantee it's there. As much as we might wish it otherwise, we can't trust everyone. You know, not even Jesus did that. Think about the ways in which he ordered his life. He spoke his message to the crowds, right? Even his enemies heard Jesus' message. But then there were the followers, the many hundreds of men and women who gave their life to his way. And they were privileged with some inside knowledge. They received the Sermon on the Mount, for example. But then there were the 12, the disciples that Jesus handpicked, specially chose, and he entrusted them very specially. He trusted them so much that one of them betrayed him. And then think about the Garden of Gethsemane. He takes those 12, actually 11, with him to the Garden of Gethsemane, this end-of-life experience. But even the 12 didn't get access. It was the 3. Peter, James, and John had special access, special responsibilities. He trusted them to take watch for him. But in the end, even in Jesus' world, in the end, it was just Jesus and the Father whom he trusted. Not even Jesus trusts everyone equally, and neither should we. I know that the concept of circles of trust is cliche and old, but it's true. If everyone is in, then no one is in. We must not trust everything to everyone, but we have to trust everything to someone. So these 2 principles for stewarding our secrets well, they might seem obvious. But for me, they've been hard-won. They're intuitive, but deeply true. I began this talk by sharing about the loss of my brother Casey in the fire 19 years ago. This is him running that fall down the hill at Mount Hope, where he rests. And it's strange, in the months and weeks and even years that followed losing him, I would have given absolutely anything to have him back. I would have done anything in the world to change history. I would have given my life. And while I still carry deep grief for that loss, and while I continue to see loss show up year after year, I was just thinking last week about my brother's children that he never had. And I thought about my son's cousins that they will never know. And while I continue to carry grief and stumble into new pits of sadness along the way, I've also discovered a strange sense of gratitude for the life that I've lived, for the path that I've been on, and for the way that God has walked with me all along the way. At first, I kept even this gratitude secret. Surprise, surprise. It felt perverse to even admit it. It felt like a betrayal. But as I've sat with it, I think Casey would understand. And I think he'd be proud of the healing that I've stumbled into. And I think he'd be proud of the new connections I've made and the depth of intimacy that I've developed with people in my life whom I've loved by telling his story. And I think he'd offer his blessing over the ways in which it has brought me courage and purpose and identity. I think Casey would be happy to know that the darkness of his loss has transformed in my life into the greatest of gifts. Your secrets will hold you back from what you want most in life. But if you steward them well, if you share them at the right time in the right place to people who are trustworthy, I promise you, the life you're waiting for, the life you want most is waiting for you on the other side. Before I offer a short prayer, I want to invite Adrian up on the platform with me.
Before I make any announcements, can we just give our pastor here a round of applause for sharing that powerful testimony? I want to personally just say thank you for that. I know how brave, how scary, how emotional it was to share that. And we want to transition that offer to you guys here. We understand that this story, this encounter that we just had may have been heavy for many people here. Many people felt convicted to share the experiences, the secrets that they have in their lives. And we want to let you know, whoever is out there, that there are people here at this university who want to go through that experience with you. We have pastors, we have chaplains who are ready and available to just listen, to offer counsel, to offer advice, whenever you feel comfortable and ready to come to us. We also have a phenomenal counseling and testing center that schedules appointments. Michelle Naden does an amazing job at overseeing that department. And if there are people who need resources, who need information on how to deal with the grief, the struggles that you are experiencing, we want you to know that we are here and we are able, we are willing to be of whatever help that we can for you.
Would you pray with me? You are the God from whom nothing can be hidden. And we are a people of many secrets. Bless us and heal us, conscript us and carry us. And in the end, our loving God, be near to us. Amen.
So